pain. It's something that lives with me. I think it's going to live with me for forever, right? It's not something that really heals, but you do learn to live with that and also carry it and channel it in a positive way. And I think we took, that grief and we're trying to do right by Blake's memory.
It's very strange because they almost kind of like made us feel like we were an enigma. Like they couldn't talk to us because we lost our son. And it was very strange because we've never experienced that. And, we love getting to talk about Blake. Being able to talk about Blake brings his memory alive with us and with people.
Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Dr. Shafer of Talks with Dr. Shafer. I'm a physician, mom, life coach, musician, author, publisher, and I'm passionate about using storytelling as a tool to help you reclaim your story and build your most beautiful future. Now, today, I am so honored to have a wonderful couple on the show, Colleen and Matt Kaminski. Colleen and Matt lost their son, Blake Edward, who suffered stillbirth in March of 2024 at 28 weeks along in her pregnancy. Colleen and Matt turned their grief and love for their son into purpose, inspired by their opportunity to use a CuddleCot after their son's birth. Colleen and Matt are working to spread awareness of stillbirth and how having a CuddleCot in every hospital can give families an opportunity to spend precious time with their baby. Thank you, Colleen and Matt, for being here to share your story of grief, loss, remembrance, and love with us.
Yes, thank you so much for having us this morning.
I really appreciate your willingness to share your story, because that's something I'm so passionate about. When we share the things that are sometimes the most charged or the most difficult to share, we find connection with people, because those are the really important and connecting stories of our lives. Those are the things that really matter. And you being willing and able to share that story and help others navigate those moments too, especially so early along in this process for you as a family, is so generous.
Thank you. Yeah, it was when we lost Blake, we knew we wanted to do something. We knew we wanted to get involved. We, thank God, had access to a CuddleCot, and that was what made us really know we needed to help, and wanted to help other families out there.
Let's dive in. So we've mentioned the CuddleCot and how it gave you that precious time. For our listeners that don't know what a CuddleCot is, could you tell us more about what you learned in that moment? Because as you and I have discussed before, it's not something that most people are aware of, unfortunately, until they need it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we had, to be honest, no idea what it was until we lost Blake. And the way I kind of describe it is it's almost like a little isolette for the baby to keep them cool, so that you are able to have that time with your child. So we were able to spend a few days with Blake, and he was able to meet his aunts and uncles, his grandparents, and we were just able to have that vital time that we didn't know we needed.
Yeah, and a little bit about CuddleCots too is what I learned through this process with Ashley's Embrace is they're not really accessible in the United States as much. They're made in England or in the UK, and they get shipped over here. And it's not something that's widely known. I mean, we're in Cleveland. We were lucky enough to be in a hospital that had CuddleCots available to us. But a lot of hospitals do not have them. So that's where, we found out about Ashley's Embrace because the CuddleCot we were using was an Ashley's Embrace CuddleCot. So, it, kind of brought more awareness to, hey, this is a unique thing that, if unfortunately families have to go through this, stillbirth is something that happens. But if we could spread awareness and bring more CuddleCots to hospitals around the country, can at least give some families some peace.
And for our listeners, Ashley's Embrace is an organization started by Erin Maroon and her husband, Anthony, after the devastating loss of their daughter, Ashlie, at full term. And that inspired them to create Ashley's Embrace to help support families experiencing stillbirth and infant loss, to provide cooling units, which is what we were talking about when we discussed the CuddleCot, to medical facilities across the U.S. They did not have access to a CuddleCot when their daughter was born, and they had very limited time with her. And certainly, if you go and listen to interviews they've done, when you are experiencing infant loss, stillbirth, as a mother, the things that we may not understand if it hasn't happened to us is the mother's also sometimes having a medical crisis of their own during that time. And that limits that interaction as well. And so understanding that just brings even more attention to the fact that having a CuddleCot can just be such an important way to allow mother and father and family to go through that process. So I appreciate you bringing up Ashley's Embrace, and I want to talk more about your activity. I'd like to highlight, because a lot of times when we have these conversations about difficult subjects, because this is something that we would rather avoid, it's important that we understand that these are the sorts of things that happen to us, to our sisters, to their spouses every day. And if we have heightened awareness of the probability that can happen, that can help us better show up for one another and help us as well. Because you were going along in your pregnancy early on and feeling everything was going well until you got information. Can you tell us about your experience with your pregnancy and being a parent during that stage?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we found out about Blake October 7th of 2023, we had wanted children. We were so excited, and we got the positive pregnancy test on that day. And then December 5th, we found out he was a boy. So we already had his name picked out, Blake Edward. And then everything was going great. I was taking all the precautions. I was limiting caffeine. I was tracking that.
Did a baby moon.
Yeah, we did a baby moon. We traveled, just got ready for Blake. We were making his nursery. We had his theme picked out, which was Winnie the Pooh. So everything was going great. And then at our 20-week scan, which is supposed to be a super exciting scan where you see all 10 fingers and toes, you see everything. We found out that he did have a very rare heart defect. So his heart defect was the aorta left ventricle tunnel, and it occurs in about 1 in 500,000 to 1 in a million. We had fantastic doctors and nurses at university hospitals who did our scans every Thursday. We did growth scans every 2 weeks, and he was doing fantastic. And then, unfortunately, on March 23rd, we did go to the hospital because of the decreased movement, and we found out that there was no longer a heartbeat. So it was a risk, with the heart defect. We were told there's not much research since it is so rare, but about, maybe I think 20% chance of survival for him, and then it became 50% chance. So we really went into this protective mode. I think for Matt and I both, we did everything we could. We wanted to make sure that no matter what, go into protection mode when you find out that your child has any sort of defect, anything, and even now with our son Caleb, who came into the world February 13th of this year, you're very protective. You want to do what is best for them and give them the best chance. So with Blake, we did everything we could. We followed everything to a T. But unfortunately, his heart just couldn't take the defect anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely it was a rare case, and even the doctors, they picked up what it was. It wasn't something that they had ever seen. It's not, I think we were the first case actually in Ohio. We're looking at research papers that are, taking data from like the 1980s to now, and there's really only there was like 20 cases of this that were documented. So it was just something everybody was going in blind, including the doctors. So we did the weekly scans, and, the surgery, he was going to have surgery no matter what. But it was kind of the goal. The sprint to 28 weeks really was when they would want to try to deliver, at the absolute earliest. And we would have to induce probably at 33 weeks if we did make it to that point, to give the surgeons more time, or more space to actually fix the issue with that tunnel in his heart. So yeah, we were, it was the journey of, at least we got to see him every week on the ultrasounds. The nurses and doctors that we got to meet with, they loved Blake, and he would always give them trouble on those heart echoes. But he, it was nice to be able to. I feel like that was our time to get to spend and get to know Blake. Um, you don't always get weekly scans. It's not a normal thing. We didn't know what to expect too, and it was our first baby. So, like, you go a few months in between scans, and you think, okay, everything's fine, and you just don't know what to expect. So it definitely was a quite a learning experience for the first time pregnancy.
And one thing that you have mentioned before that you learned from that experience, because as you said, it was more than you would typically expect during a pregnancy, weekly scans, the time, financial commitment. I mean, it was really, Blake wasn't here yet, and you were parenting full time. And you shared with me how you learned from that experience that you were ready to be parents and that you were really great parents. And then you wanted to share that with your son, not only with the memory of Blake, but also now with your newborn, Caleb. And I just think that is so beautiful. I would love to hear more about when Blake came into the world and you had the CuddleCot there. What are the memories that you made that you now can carry forward and share with Caleb and keep as remembrance of that time with Blake?
Yeah, I think just having the cuddle cot and giving us that time was the most important. We were able to do things like skin to skin with him. So we were able to have him on my chest, have him on Matt's chest. And one thing that I always think about and I think is so special is the fact that we were able to show him pictures and videos. Matt and I showed him pictures from our wedding, showed him pictures from our baby moon that, he was with us, but he didn't get to see everything. Just really fun things that we wanted to share with him. We were able to do so and have that time to still hold him and introduce him to things. Like, for example, our room that we were in, there was the landing pad for the helicopter when it would come, and Matt would show him every single time that the helicopter would land. And so that was super fun to see because we were interested to watch it too, and so we had him like propped up with us. We were showing him and telling him stories, but just the time that we got was so important. And
Yeah, I think, yeah, just taking advantage of that time, and like the little things, like seeing a helicopter land. We got to, family got to come in and meet him. Colleen's brother was able to drive in from Washington D.C. And see him because of the CuddleCot. We got to read to him. We we got so many baby books. Kind of went down memory lane of what we liked to read when we were kids, and we got to read those with him too. I got to watch Star Wars with him, show him my favorite movie. And it just really, it created precious memories that we had. We got to, the nurses were so great, and, took photos of us with him and photos of him. So we have that lasting memory. For us, and got his footprints. They did a great job, so we have a lot to remember with Blake. And we actually keep Blake's ashes on a mantle over in our living room, so he's always kind of just there hanging out with us. That's how we like to see it. So he's watching us handle our son Caleb now at night. I'm sure Blake would have been just as fussy at times as well.
They all are. They
Yeah.
all are. That sleeping through the night thing, that's a myth. That's the opposite of birth control right there.
The best advice to give that for going through it is do it in shifts. We just help each other to make sure somebody
Oh,
gets a little bit of sleep. We each get a little bit of sleep each night, but no,
Yeah.
it's definitely put things into perspective, and those sleepless nights are we're gonna look back fondly on them.
I appreciate you bringing up the teamwork that you have now with parenting your newborn, because I think for you and your grieving process too, that teamwork was really instrumental in carrying you through that time and giving you that resilience and that focus to take that grief and use it for a purpose to help with remembrance and to help other families who are experiencing, unfortunately, what you had experienced. Can you share with me at what point in time after you had the experience you had after Blake's death and using the CuddleCot did you decide to become advocates for Ashley's embrace and for spreading awareness of stillbirth?
I think once we got settled at home, so we had a service for Blake, and it was a beautiful service, and we were able to get his ashes. And I think once we got settled at home with him, and he was able to finally be home, we decided we wanted to do something. We didn't know exactly where to begin that process or where to look. And so I started doing research about the CuddleCots. And it was perfect because our CuddleCot was from Ashley's Embrace. So we started to do more research about Ashley's Embrace, and we're located in Cleveland. They're right down the road in Canton, and it felt like it was meant to be. Um, and I know they've put CuddleCots, I think, throughout all 50 states, at least one in every
Yes.
state. So just the fact that they were so local, it felt like a really good connection. And we decided we, of course, wanted to start the process of seeing what we could do to help. And so our goal for Blake's first birthday was to install one, maybe two, if we were really, really lucky. Um, and then as we started the fundraising process, people from all over, everybody had helped us, and we ended up being able to install seven. So we had people who donated, just saw it on Facebook or just read about it. One of my best friend's family, they put together a fundraiser for Blake, and it was just a really beautiful day. And so we knew this was what we wanted to do and continue to help and bring awareness to it, because I think sometimes when you have a stillborn, it almost feels like you did something wrong or whatever it might be. And there's almost like a shame component to it. So I had to deal with that. And going through the shame component is really hard to get over because you feel like you let your son or daughter down. And so once I was able to move through that pain and that feeling, I was able to put myself fully into getting these CuddleCots installed and being able to help raise awareness about it and bring out that it's not a shameful experience. There's nothing that you could have done to prevent this. just a horrible thing that happened. And I think other people need to know that it's okay to ask about Blake or any other stillborn and bring more awareness to it.
Yeah, definitely. I think too, just, with Ashley's embrace and getting involved with that, when it first happened, our the hospital we were at had some great resources they gave. Um, Colleen and I, I got different books about grief specific to stillborns, but one that was really impactful was letters from other dads. And I know that there was letter from other moms who've been through this, and just kind of hearing the different stories, I think really inspired me to want to get involved. Like, how can we help other families who are going through this? And, again, luckily, when, we were spending time with Blake, Colleen noticed that Ashley's Embrace plaque on there, and like Colleen said, they were right down the street. It was perfect, and then too, what was amazing about the whole experience of fundraising is just the unexpected support you get from friends of friends, family of friends that you don't really know, but have now heard your stories and were inspired enough to donate to our cause and Ashley Embrace's cause. So it was just amazing to see community come together to help other families who will be grieving.
What would you like to tell other families who are going through this grieving process with everything that you have learned and experienced through both your story as well as working with Ashley's Embrace? What message would you send to families?
One thing I would say is that it does get better. Right now, it seems like you are in the darkest of the days. And I think just knowing that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, the days will get easier. So focusing on maybe one thing a day, whether that be just getting out of bed or taking a walk, or if you do the dishes, focusing on one thing and saying, I did that today. I completed a task. And that definitely helps. My mom had told me, she said, one day, or she says, every day it's going to get a little bit easier. And I was like, okay, so when does that start? But it does. It truly does. Every single day, it's going to get a little bit easier. And you just have to focus on the time that you spent with them or the time you had with them throughout the pregnancy, whatever that might be.
Yeah. I think for me, is just be honest with yourself about how you're feeling, and that grief, and stick together with your partner through it. We were lucky enough to have a great support system. Both of our families live nearby us. But you and your partner are the only ones who really truly know like what happened. We were the only ones in that delivery room. Um, that was our son, and understand that you guys will grieve at different times and at different rates, and that's okay. And definitely, it's okay to feel how you feel. If you feel like you need to cry, then cry. It's a pain. It's something that it lives with me. I think it's going to live with me for forever, right? It's not something that really heals, but you do learn to um, you learn to live with that, and also um, carry it and channel it in a positive way. And I think we took that grief, and we're trying to do right by Blake's memory, through Ashley's Embrace, and also through just being good parents to Caleb, our newborn. um, just learning those lessons and not taking that experience for granted, I think is super important. um, and yeah, but the number one thing I would say is just be there for your partner. That is so, so, so important. And understand that they, if you guys get through it together like we did, it makes that healing process a lot easier.
I think that is such an incredibly important comment to make. And I think also I've heard in discussing stillbirth with other couples that especially men in that situation can feel under supported because of perhaps some cultural norms of reaching out to mothers and supporting them, because not only are their emotions involved, but their physical bodies were involved. You know, they may have had to have surgery. They may have had their own medical crisis, right? And they have to heal and their bodies have to heal. And that healing process can take years after pregnancy. So it's a normal focus on a woman's emotional and physical healing. And sometimes in that process, the men, the fathers, can feel left out and that they don't have an avenue. Matt, can you speak to that aspect and how you would encourage men to reach out for support and not be afraid to use their voice in this way?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mentioned one of the things that really helped me was that letters from other fathers, and like in that there's a lot of that, right? Fathers don't know how to deal with that emotion. Um, we're raised to compartmentalize, yeah. Those emotions like really, hold a lot of that in. Um, and I think for me, just kind of understanding that norm or stereotype with guys, and just really trying to pivot away from that and saying this. I was in the delivery room, we were side by side, Colleen was there. We This is the first time Colleen's giving birth, and our son had passed, and that was a tough 24 hours. Obviously, I'm not doing any of the work, but I can be there for her, emotionally. And I think it's just important to remember that yes, you are there to support, but also take care of yourself. Make sure that you, if you need to, get help. Like we saw a grief counselor together, went to a couple sessions for that helped us get through it. And again, I think just letting yourself feel how you're feeling, and not trying to mask that is super important, I think. Nobody who's watching you go through this is expecting you to be um uh, you know stoic or tough through this. It's okay to feel how you feel. And again, just leaning on Colleen, I'm lucky that I have a spouse. My wife is so supportive of me, and when I need to go to her and cry and talk about Blake, she's there, and same here. I'm here for her. So yeah, I think it's just knowing it's okay. You maybe journal, do anything that's going to help you express how you feel. And also to just acceptance of that hurt and that pain it was important in my healing process, knowing that it's something that's going to live with me, and it's a part of how I'll live going forward, and it'll affect a lot of my decisions.
I really appreciate you highlighting and focusing on the fact that it's said a different way. If we don't heal ourselves, we can't be there to support the people we want to support in our lives. So you can't be there for Colleen if you are just burying the emotions you have in this life-changing experience that, as you said, you will carry with you, but you can learn to process it and work with that grief and decide how you want to move forward. You need to do that on a self-healing journey, but you can also do it as a couple and with the resources. So I really appreciate you being so vulnerable and sharing that. And I would love to hear again the title of the book. I know we've discussed it before, but to highlight
Yeah.
for our listeners, the one that was so helpful for you.
From father to father, letters from lost dad to lost dad.
And that was really instrumental in creating a support group. But then you didn't just keep it between you and the book. You've really tried to share that and encourage other dads to open up in that way to help them in that grieving process.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That's that book. Like, there's some, you could tell some of the dads in that are writing letters do keep it in, and that was their outlet. And others that are more I think, of my perspective of being a little bit more open about it. So I think, at least for me, it was helpful just to be more open. I mean, everybody's going to grieve in their own way. Um, but just knowing you're not alone, and knowing that you can share it not only with other dads who've gone through this, but my friends have been supportive. They were there for us when we were really going through it, right after everything happened with Blake. And that, I think, that's inspiring for them as well, and it's inspiring for me to know, like, hey, I could talk to my friends about this. It's not, these are my closest friends, and they understand that I'm going through a tough time right now, and it's okay. I don't need to hide those emotions, even though they haven't gone through something like this either. So yeah, I think just overall, I would definitely encourage dads to just have a more open approach to it, and also just what happened, and I love getting to talk about Blake and honoring his memory. I think that that's something that helps me live on. I feel like he's always with me, so I feel like it would be uh, doing myself an injustice if I didn't like to talk about him and talk about how I feel.
And to your point, what are some things as you were going through your grieving process that people who had good intentions did that were difficult for you? What they did or maybe didn't do? And
Yeah,
what are some things that people did that really, really meant a lot to you and helped you on your grieving process?
yeah. I think there's a lot of people who don't know how to um, talk to you about something that's happened. So, I think our closest friends did a great job of just coming over and listening to what happened in our story. Um, I think one of the things we noticed, we had one of the things that kind of started us on this whole thing of wanting to have babies was our friends started to have kids too. So see those kids, and they're um, we were so excited to have a baby, but that came with going to kids' birthday parties, and I can remember other families that we knew through friends and everything, just kind of avoiding us, not knowing what to say, because maybe they had a healthy baby, and we had a stillbirth. And I think that's one of the things I would emphasize more, is like, it's okay to talk to other parents. I think we're going out, putting ourselves out there. You know we we're okay talking about Blake, but when we feel kind of like, if you feel uncomfortable, it's going to make us feel uncomfortable. So I think that's the thing I would emphasize, is just it's okay to just lend support, and honestly just say it sucks. It doesn't have to be like, this happened for a reason. I think you could just tell people, like, hey, that's been through this, hey, this sucks, and I'm sorry that happened to you. So everybody has their own way of dealing with grief, and I think that gets projected sometimes. And again, if you haven't gone through this, you probably don't know how to react or talk about it with somebody else. But just being there for other parents, and um, knowing that we're grieving, but we're it doesn't make it, no, we're not going to be not happy for other families who have a healthy baby. It's okay to come and talk to us. So that's one of the things we noticed that was kind of strange, I would
Yeah,
say.
it's very strange because they almost kind of like made us
So
feel like we were an enigma. Like they couldn't talk to us because we lost our son. And it was very strange because we've never experienced that. And we love getting to talk about Blake. Being able to talk about Blake brings his memory alive with us and with people. So that was really, really challenging. But I think on the other side too is we have such a great support system. So when we do things like we went to the Ashley's Embrace Gala, which was so much fun in last October, or we have the golf outing coming up soon, which we're really excited about. Our friends and family are so supportive, and like we have really great friends who want to buy polos. We're getting custom polos for the people that are golfing or just to have, and our friends and family always want to be in on that. They always want to do whatever they can. So even last year for the University Hospitals does a wonderful remembrance walk, and we were able to go, and we had a huge crowd, which was so fun, all there to support Blake and Matt and I, and we all got t-shirts, and we probably ordered 30 t-shirts for everybody, and the box was just massive when we got them. So just having that support system, it makes it a lot easier, even when there are times when people kind of treat you a little bit different or look at you kind of differently, that you don't have your child. But so having that support system is just fantastic.
Yeah, and I really think that helps with the grief too. Is we have such great friends and family that again, it's something that we're comfortable talking about with them, and then they've just shown up time and time again to these events through Ashley's Embrace, through university hospitals. But I think just being able to spread awareness of like, hey, showing people it's okay. I think a lot of folks might not want to talk about what happened to their son or daughter, and that's okay. Again, if that's how you want to grieve, but for us, it's really been therapeutic to have that support system, and those folks who might also treat us as an enigma or tiptoe around us. At times, they might also have friends that have gone through this, and maybe they just don't know. And unfortunately, it's something that can be common. And that's another thing too. We did with, I remember, like your parents. They've had friends who went through the same thing, and you don't know about it until they talked about it with you. So it's definitely something that being open out with our friends. Oh, sorry, Caleb's coughing in the background.
Oh.
Has really helped us with the grieving process. And again, I can go to any one of those friends and talk to them if I need to.
That's an important point to make, and I appreciate you doing so, that everyone's journey and comfort level with sharing their story is different. And when we share these stories, when someone who is ready and willing and actually really happy to share these stories, it's not just for people just like you who want to share their stories very publicly. It's also for people who maybe that's not their personality, or they're just not ready, but they can privately in their home listen to a podcast, read a book like the book you mentioned earlier, that will provide support. And so it's so important, if you have this feeling that you want to support a charity because of an experience you've had in your life, or you want to share your story, that you never think of your story as being something that shouldn't be shared or that is too small to share, because there will be people who have support from that and who are inspired. And it may just get them through a really tough day that they weren't sure they could get through without that support. So I so appreciate the work you're doing. You've donated 7 CuddleCots, I believe, to Metro Health in Cleveland. Is that correct?
Yes.
One of the CuddleCots went to Metro. One went to University Hospitals where Blake was born.
The rest, I know there was one in Wyoming. Mm-hmm. The rest, so those were the 2 specific ones we wanted to donate to, because we had Blake at university hospitals. And then my sister works for Metro actually as a NICU nurse. So they, I think they only had one CuddleCot too. So university hospitals had a few, but Metro only had one. And it's a big hospital. There's a lot of babies being born there, and a lot of things that are happening. So I think too, one of the things that my sister, she told me, she was like, we really need one. So it was really cool to go see kind of one where my sister works and kind of having an impact on that. But also, I think it's important. And these big hospitals, we're lucky enough to have the CuddleCot, but if there's two families going through the same thing at once, and you can't offer that resource to them because another grieving family is using it. I think that's just something that we'd like to see. And I know Ashley's Embrace, their mission is to hey, if you want the option to have a CuddleCot, it's there. So and we're really lucky to live somewhere where, or that we had that offered to us right away. I think that was one of the first things the nurses told us after we found out that Blake had passed was, hey, there's this thing called the CuddleCot. So if you'd like, you can spend days with your baby if you want to create some memories. So they did an awesome job of making it aware to us, but not everybody has that experience. Um, so it is amazing, and now like I follow the Facebook for Ashley's Embrace, and getting to see where all these CuddleCots are donated, and they post too, like they'll we'll see like when it's a Blake one that's going somewhere, but it is just amazing to see that it's impacting these hospitals and going to impact families as well.
With everything that you have done now in just over a year's time, since learning about Ashley's Embrace and CuddleCots and experiencing your loss, with everything that you've done to support other families as you have been grieving yourselves, what do you see for the future of keeping Blake's memory alive and helping increase awareness about stillbirths and making sure that families have access to things like CuddleCots and support after they experience this loss?
I would love to see every single hospital have a CuddleCot. And I think that's where Ashley's Embrace is headed. They are doing incredible work. And just watching them grow and watching them be able to put CuddleCots into hospitals that don't have them is so incredible. And then also knowing that Blake's name is attached to those is so fantastic too. Um, some of the things we do to keep Blake's memory alive is we always include him in everything we do. So, for example, when Caleb was born, we wanted to make sure Blake was there with us. So we brought his ashes. He sat right next to us while we were going through the whole process. And what was really special too was that our nurses who helped deliver Blake were actually there for Caleb's delivery too. So it was just so special, and it felt like Blake had kind of sent us that message, like, I'm right here, I'm watching over you guys as Caleb comes to the world. And so some different things that we do just to keep him in our memories is always talking about him. Always bringing him up in our conversations. When people ask how many kids we have, we do talk about Blake too, of course, because he is our child. And then just, we celebrated his birthday last month, or we made him a birthday cake. We put candles on it for his first birthday. And Matt and I actually went to a restaurant that he, I think he loved it because he would always kick when I would eat there. So I just assume he loved it. So we went there for dinner, and then we came home and had his birthday cake, and he blew out the candles and everything and sang to him. Matt and I both wear bracelets that have his name on it. Mine is actually from the hospital that the nurses made us, so that was really sweet. Matt and I both have his footprints tattooed on us in different spots, and we want to make sure that when Caleb continues to grow, he knows he has an older brother that he can turn to. Um, we talk about him with Caleb. Caleb's only he's 2 months now, but he doesn't really understand it. But we want him to know and grow up with the fact that he had a brother, and he's still so special to us. And it's just incredible for us to see Caleb growing and knowing he's going to grow up with his older brother.
Yeah, definitely. I think just keeping those milestones alive with that we're going to see with Caleb and just us three knowing that, hey, we got another son that's with us as well. That's there with us through those milestones. Another part of like just awareness in general, like the Ashley's Embrace and CuddleCots. It's amazing to see their journey, what they've done, and also just eventually, I'd love to see CuddleCots be more accessible, maybe be produced in the United States. You know, right now they're being produced out in England, and you know they're stored here, but it's hard to get them over here, and it makes it a greater expense, which you know can obviously cause like an oversight on hospitals' part. Um, so it's amazing the awareness that the team at Ashley's Embrace is bringing to CuddleCots. And I think in stillbirth in general, like we had such a positive experience with our nurses and doctors at university hospitals. Like they really impacted, and you know they're a big reason why we started. You know, wanted to do something like get involved with Ashley's Embrace and do this fundraiser. But you know, you hear stories of you know some people who didn't have a good experience when they went through a stillbirth. You know, nurses or doctors that didn't, you know, weren't empathetic to what was happening to those parents. And I can't imagine going through that, because when you find out that you're having a stillbirth, or if something you know is wrong, like we found out something was wrong with Blake, and we were lucky enough that the nurses, doctors, the specialists we had to see were so nice and encouraging through the whole process, and respectful of like what we wanted to do. um Not everybody gets that experience, unfortunately. So I would love to just bring awareness to other medical professionals who maybe if you think about you know a family what they're going through in that time, making sure you know you're giving that appropriate attention to what the moms and dads are going through. And it's a crappy situation that those parents are going through, but you do have an opportunity to make an impact. And you know that's something we'll remember forever, is how those nurses and doctors helped us through the stillbirth and getting us through those 24 hours until Blake came out finally. And um, you know, again, very, very, very inspiring. And shout out to all the nurses and doctors that do, you know, make that impact. You guys are amazing. Um, I'm sure it's just a small percentage that don't,
Right.
you know, that had it, but it's still no parent should have to feel like that, especially in that moment.
As someone who works in the medical field, you know, it can be a really challenging field to work in, but I think that's a really beautiful reminder of the positive impact you can have, even when you're having a difficult day or going through something yourself, and keeping that in mind. Because when we impact someone positively, even in their most challenging moments, that love and that care comes back to us tenfold. So just leaning into the ways that we can be a positive impact in the world and help someone through their moment of grief and loss is really impactful and powerful. And I appreciate you giving us that loving reminder that we all need from time to time. How can listeners, if they want to support keeping Blake's memory alive, as well as helping other families who will go through this in the future, who maybe would not have access to a CuddleCot, and we need to open our hearts and give so that we can support this movement to make sure that CuddleCots are available? How can listeners reach out to you and donate their time, help spread the word? What's the best way to do that to make sure that they can donate to getting CuddleCots where they need to be?
So I think for awareness, Ashley's Embrace is definitely the go-to resource. They have those connections to bring the CuddleCots into the United States, and I think just bringing awareness around. I think one of Erin from Ashley's Embrace's mission is she goes around advocating to make this easier in the United States. Whether that be through legislation, reaching out to hospitals. I know there's a lot of outreach to hospitals. A lot of hospitals don't know that CuddleCots even exist. So that's something, you know, just making your local hospital aware of, like, hey, is this something that we have? Maybe you work in a hospital and you're listening to this podcast, and you've never heard of a CuddleCot, something that you could bring up internally, and again, something you could bring up to local legislation, or your local representatives of, hey, this is something that we should have more awareness on. But Ashley's Embrace is definitely the our go-to. We went through them because they have this unique connection, have the logistics down to bring those in and then distribute them to the hospitals who are in need.
Thank you so much, Colleen and Matt. I so appreciate you sharing your story. I appreciate how open you are with your journey and how you are taking your grief and your love, keeping it alive, and helping to support other families. You are so inspiring, and your love for one another, for Blake and Caleb, and for other families, it just comes shining through. I so appreciate you sharing this time with us and your story.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Shafer.
Yeah, thank you for having us on here. This has been incredible. And, if there are people out there that ever want to reach out to Matt or I, we are more than open, more than happy to have conversations with them. So whatever that might be, you can find me right on Facebook. So we would be happy to answer questions or just be a resource for whomever.
Somebody to talk to.
Yeah.
That is so important to just feel seen and heard and supported during whatever moments you're going through in life. We all need that. And we will make sure the information on how to contact Matt and Colleen Kaminski is in the show notes, as well as how to contact and support Ashley's Embrace. Thank you so much again for being on the show. And thank you so much to our storytellers for being here again this week to share this important, inspiring hour with us. Until next time, stay safe and take care. I'll talk to you soon.